Hello and welcome to episode 150 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I'm your host, Sigmund Judge. I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Devon Dundee. I think we are in the holiday spirit now, well and truly. How's it going?
It's going great. I am definitely feeling in a celebratory mood. It's episode 150, which we've really been looking forward to. We're less than a week till Christmas, right in that final rush on the downhill slope to the holiday. So, yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm ready to celebrate. How about you?
Yeah, very much. Looking forward to celebrating. It has been a heavy year. It's been a fun year, don't get me wrong, and it's been eventful. 2024, full of ups, a lot to cover this week. Alongside, of course, some listener questions that we're going to answer. Ahead of that, just a very, very big thank you to everyone that got in touch over the last few weeks as we made that call. Yeah, I think there's going to be some interesting answers there, Devon.
Yeah, our listeners always amaze me with the kind of questions they come up with. It's like, oh, I've never really thought about it quite that way before. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a really fun segment. Really happy and thankful for everyone who sent those in. Of course, we're not the only ones getting ready to wrap up the year. Apple themselves are also getting ready to say goodbye to 2024. As such, Apple did last week release the last batch of major operating system updates for the year. We thought we'd highlight them very quickly. First of all, of course, tvOS 18.2 is out. We previewed it just a couple of weeks ago, but it includes the new screensavers from Peanuts featuring Snoopy himself, aspect ratio support for certain projection setups, and in the Fitness app, if you're working out in Fitness Plus, doing any workouts that have RPMs, that will be included as a stat as well, which is a nice addition for Fitness Plus diehards. So if you haven't updated your Apple TV yet, be sure to do so alongside all your other devices.
Also, not just coming to Apple TV, but elsewhere, SharePlay for live sports broadcasts. Now, I don't know if it's just live sports broadcasts or if it's live broadcasts across the TV app. We'll have to wait and see, but we may have a little bit of a wait. Maybe the first time we're going to see something of a live broadcast will be Kendrick Lamar at the Super Bowl ahead of any kind of MLS or MLB shenanigans next year. So yeah, very, very cool there. We also have natural language search in both Apple Music and Apple TV apps. And for HomePod version 18.2, we've got the natural language search also coming there alongside the long-awaited onboard enhanced audio processing for HomePod 2nd generation. And I got to say, this update is a bit of a revelation. Didn't think too much of it because, of course, enhanced audio processing came to all speakers, basically, from TV speakers to Bluetooth speakers, sound bars, anything you could play the audio of an Apple TV through. Enhanced audio came to it. But trying this on HomePod 2nd generation and hearing the difference, yeah, it is quite astounding. So if you're someone that has HomePod 2nd generations, you're in for a treat. And for those that don't, including our very own Devon, I think this is a worthy upgrade in itself, alongside the humidity sensors and everything else in that 2nd generation package.
Yeah, I'm still holding on to my OGs, but I rely heavily on enhanced audio being a parent. I need as much of that dialogue as I can without the volume being too high. So I saw this in our notes and I thought, I wonder if I need to check on any deals on the 2nd gen HomePods. But very cool to see, and it's very Apple to find that baseline for a feature, spread it out, and then take it to the next level with the latest and greatest, right? Which is always great to see. visionOS 2.2 is also out. Talk about taking things to the next level. It adds a sports multi-view, but up to 5 streams at the same time instead of the 4 that we've come to expect. Again, not a feature we can necessarily test right now because the MLS season just wrapped up. But next MLS season, and of course Friday Night Baseball as well, will be taking advantage of that multi-view. wide and ultra-wide Mac virtual display, receiving almost universal praise among the Vision Pro crowd. Very cool addition. And of course, spatial photos and videos in Safari, so that if those are posted on the web, you can watch them as well. So an opportunity to start spreading that format beyond just the Photos app and iMessage and onto the web as well, which is great to see. On Mac Stories, we have coverage of iOS 18.2 and its additions. Neilion wrote an excellent article about that. There's some great additions there. Changes to the Photos app, the way it plays videos, that I very much appreciate. There's an addition in Safari for sharing links with highlights, which is awesome. I'm actually taking advantage of that in our show notes this week, so you can look in there and see if you can find it, but it's a great feature. And then for Shortcuts users, there's the new Action Get Current app, which is something we've been wanting for quite some time. It unlocks a lot of capabilities, including a new shortcut that Federico made for Club Mac Stories members to update their action button, what it does based on the current app, in a much more simplified way than we've done before. So we'll link that in the show notes and check that out if you haven't yet.
It's so good. So good. So good.
It is. This action, I feel like it's just going to unlock so much potential. This is just the beginning, and it's really amazing to see. Speaking of Federico, he has an overview of the Apple Intelligence additions in iOS 18.2, specifically the interaction between Siri and ChatGPT, and some of the really cool stuff that he's been able to do there. He just has ideas for things that I would never think of, like reformatting text in a note, which is something I do all the time, but just letting ChatGPT do it for you with the built-in writing tools. It's really incredible what he's been able to do, so check out that story as well. But that's not all. Those were the official public releases for everybody, so go out and update your devices if you're on the public releases. But if you happen to be on the developer or public beta channels, you'll notice that there was also an 18.3 beta for tvOS this week. I guess they wanted to get that first one out the door before the end of the year, so that as it's getting ready to come out to everyone early next year, they can go ahead and start working on getting rid of those bugs. Sigmund, have you had a chance to try out tvOS 18.3 Beta 1?
I have. On the user end, not a lot there, but in the background in the code, there's some interesting murmurings happening there. A lot in regard to the language of what a digital purchase means or a digital license means, and your ability to download and where you can download. Which, in a weird way, their script is a little bit outdated because it doesn't mention Apple Vision Pro at all. And we know we get 4K downloads on Apple Vision Pro, but 1080p elsewhere. So it's going to be interesting to see what rolls out at the beginning of 2025. But yeah, a few little fun bits there. Robot vacuum support mentioned in the Home app in iOS 18.3 beta alongside the code for tvOS, but nothing actually visible on the user side just yet, and we're still waiting for compatibility. So it's going to be an interesting beginning of the year, Devon. Now, before we look forward to 2025, it is time for us to look back on 2024. Episode 150 of Magic Rays of Light is a celebration, but it's also a celebration of the year that has been. And I wanted to kick things off on the hardware front. I think there's one big star for us both, which we'll get into in a bit, but a couple personal highlights from me. The iPad Pro M4 11-inch. I love the screen. I just think it's the perfect portable viewing display to share. I also just love how simple it is to use. There's been some updates on the OS side that I think just made using multiple apps a lot easier this time around. And then just things that you wouldn't expect really from an iPad up until now, like multicam with Final Cut Camera and Final Cut Pro. I've really enjoyed my iPad Pro M4 11-inch, though maybe I should just be calling it the Apple TV Go, because that has been a personal highlight of mine as well. One cool addition this year, which isn't anything really new technology wise, but new to me because needing more hard drive space and wanting to rely less on the cloud, although the cloud is the backup for a lot of my stuff. And that is my Synology NAS, which has a number of bays full of terabytes, and I'm using that to back up my personal media files, the podcast audio that we record each week, different photos, different artwork from Apple's original shows, which does sometimes change from season to season. So I've got all of that backed up along with other things as well, like spatial audio and video and high-res video and different things that I'm working on for next year. So really, really happy to have all of that. I'm going to shut up now, Devon. What are your hardware highlights for this year?
First of all, I just love your picks. They're great. And I want to hear more about your Synology in the coming year and what all you're doing with that, because I know that's a lot of fun to work with. For me, hardware-wise, the first thing I want to shout out is maybe a little bit controversial, but it's a hardware feature of the iPhone that I've come to rely on this year, and that is camera control. I usually, when I am in a scenario where I want to take a picture, it is one of those like blink and you'll miss it kind of moments. You have to be fast. And the camera control has given me the ability to reach in my back pocket, grab my phone, and by the time the phone's at eye level, the camera's already out. And I may have already even taken a picture just in case. And that is just invaluable to me. I've set it up to switch between the cameras so I can quickly zoom into that 5X if I need to, or zoom back out if I need to do that. I find it very intuitive, and I've enjoyed the camera control a lot. And I haven't used it so much for the visual intelligence stuff yet, but just for camera capture, quickly getting photos and videos of what's happening in my life, it's been transformative, and I really, really appreciate it.
Nice.
My other hardware pick for this year is the Apple Watch Series 10, which I upgraded to from the 7, so that was a pretty good jump. I also changed sizes. I went with the bigger screen. I got enticed by, just how huge Apple was talking about, and it really is a big screen. But what I found is, with this update, I'm using it more as a computer rather than just for notifications. I'm using it for playback controls. I'm using apps on it more than I used to before. I'm running shortcuts on it, which, I'm just getting more value out of my Apple Watch now than I was before. And the jet black is just an awesome look. So yeah, I love my Apple Watch Series 10, and it's really just made me enthusiastic about Apple Watch as a platform again.
And, talking of time, which is something you can do on an Apple Watch.
Believe it or not.
Read the time, believe it or not. The year has gone by so fast, and there are some things I just don't remember that well, and there are things that I remember like they happened yesterday. And one of those things was making the trip to California to pick up my Apple Vision Pro from Cupertino on release day. It is my hardware highlight of the year. There are many reasons for it. And, well, Devon, you're nodding in agreement, which I think it means that we're agreeing on this.
Yeah, it's my hardware pick for the year for sure. I didn't have quite as much of a journey to get there. I drove a couple hours to the Apple Store. I didn't fly across the ocean. But, yeah, that whole just time of the Vision Pro launch was just so special to me. I feel like I was really young during the iPhone launch and the iPad, even the Apple Watch. Like, I just wasn't as involved with the community at that time. But this it felt like everyone was talking about the same thing. We got to be on the ground floor in terms of trying it out on day one and sharing our impressions. And just that whole experience alone was so special. But then you get to take the thing home and use it and experience it every day. And yeah, I mean, I love working with mine. I use it as my computer. I love the immersive video aspect of it and look forward to those releases every month. This is what I want computing to be going forward. This is the first version, but this is the direction that I want it to go. I'm fully convinced. I'm fully on board. And yeah, Vision Pro, just an incredible piece of hardware that I was so fortunate that I got to pick up this year.
Yeah, it was and it still is very special every time I put it on. It has completely changed how I look at the entertainment sphere. And not so much on computing. I did do that at the beginning of the year. I remember we were writing notes for the TCA, both with our Vision Pros on, and we were collaborating, and that was very, very cool. And I still do use it productively from time to time, but there are connections that I can have through FaceTime, through shared spaces, and through immersive video and spatial video that I'm able to capture on my phone, that are just really, really special. Along with 3D, which I feel like is something that's an oversight by a lot of people when talking about Vision Pro. The best 3D presentation I've ever seen. The support for high frame rates and different resolution types, and even as simple as the beautiful presentation of different aspect ratios. Really, it's been a dream, to be quite honest with you. It is by no means the perfect product right now and a perfect platform, but I think part of the privilege, and it is a privilege, to be able to have heads-on with Apple Vision Pro and be able to have it. I understand, the price and that barrier to entry is something that a lot of people will feel, and it's something I felt when I put the money down. I know you felt it as well, but the experience, the journey of seeing where it was even in January through to WWDC and Vision OS 2, it really has been a privilege. And a few nitpicks still. No iTunes special features. No upgrade paths to get some of the films that I already own in 3D that were transferred elsewhere. Things that I know Apple have heard from both of us, and they are listening, and hopefully there is a fix somewhere. But yeah, in general, Apple Vision Pro, the highlight for me this year, 100%.
Yeah, when I look back on 2024, I'm going to think Vision Pro in terms of just the big change in my computing life, and I think it was a shift that's going to continue into 2025 and beyond. Should we talk about apps now?
Let's do it.
All right. I've got a few apps that I wanted to shout out as my picks for the year. First of all, one that we talk about quite a bit here, Sequel by our friend Roman. An incredible app for tracking all kinds of media, but I mostly use it for TV and movies because that's what I spend the most time watching. This year, Sequel added Shortcuts Actions, which is a feature I've been wanting since I first tried the app, and I was so happy to see them implemented. They're so well done and easy to use, and I use them every single day for logging things and keeping track of what I'm watching. And I also have, some processes for keeping that data elsewhere for looking back on later, and Sequel just integrates perfectly with shortcuts for that. Also added Magic Lookup, which is another feature that I use all the time. You and we watch a lot of trailers, we read a lot of press releases, and instead of having to go into Sequel and search for those things, we can just quickly share them to the app and save them to our library. So awesome additions to Sequel this year.
I just want to add, while Sequel's not a pick of mine this year, the Notes feature for me, I think it actually came last year, but I've been using it this year. It's so niche, but if the app can find an audience with members of the press, I think it's going to be a godsend for them. So, yeah, Sequel, incredible. What else have you got for us?
I've started using an app called Collections Database this year. I started using it for keeping track of articles that I edited at Mac Stories, but it's expanded into so many different areas of my life, including my TV and movie tracking. So every day I export what I watch from Sequel into Collections, and I'm doing some kind of processing on stats there, which, those numbers, you just watch them go up. It's like, oh, wow, I've watched quite a bit of TV this year. But it's cool to have those insights, and it makes episodes like this, when we're looking back on the year, a lot easier. So Collections is a great database app that I also got to write about at Club Mac Stories this year. The new Reader, a lot of people aren't super into it, but I use it for my RSS. I actually use it for keeping up with YouTube channels, subreddits, and you can also use it for Mastodon and Blue Sky, which I use every once in a while. But it's just that one place to keep up with everything. Doing this show, we have a lot of news that we have to keep up with, a lot of sources that we're trying to make sure we're staying on top of so we don't miss anything. And Reader has become my place for that, and it's just been super useful. The last app I want to shout out is Teachy Tabs, which if you're a listener of the Connected podcast on Relay, you'll be very familiar with, made by Jonathan Ruiz, who also makes Bridges, the app that I use to do our show notes for this very podcast. Teachy Tabs, I just save a bunch of links in there for websites that I need to visit often, and I can get to them very easily from the app, or my control center is usually how I actually use it. So it's a great app. If you haven't checked it out, that one's one that's worth looking into as well.
Very, very cool. I think my apps are more media-based. If I remember off the top of my head, yep, I'm looking at the list. Yes, they are. Both from a consumption point of view, but also from a creativity point of view. Starting off with consumption, Tracked. It's just a service and app that I never really looked into, which is crazy, up until this year, when Roman and I started talking about Tracked and the integration into SQL and TV Time and some other great apps out there. So that's something I've been using, and I've got that integrated with another of my favorite apps this year. That would be Infuse from Firecore. It's a long-running app, especially on Apple TV and its support there, allowing you to play back your media files. Now, before I had a Synology NAS, I wasn't backing up any of my personal media or any of my files to a dedicated server or dedicated server storage, and now I am, and so I found the use for it. But one of the cool things is you can actually connect Tracked to Infuse, and it will automatically log what you're watching, which has been a godsend. And then, of course, that all filters to SQL and to your favorite apps that also have Tracked integration. From a Apple TV perspective, I still think the best video and audio quality, provided you're willing to pay up for it, is the top tier of Max from Warner Discovery. Just really stellar in terms of audio and video, and I really also just love that they do have certain fingers on certain details, right? We've talked about some of the misgivings of the app, but the audio and video presentation's fantastic. They are continuously wanting to innovate in different spaces. The first, really, beyond Disney, who of course had a heads up, but the first third-party streaming service to really embrace Apple Vision Pro this year. And what they've done is pretty outstanding, and some thoughts of the future that I'm privy to. It's going to be an exciting time for Max next year. But then I want to also talk about some of the independent apps on Apple Vision Pro that were really filling in the gap. Juno, which was a fantastic YouTube alternative to the YouTube app that doesn't exist on Vision Pro, but has already been previewed for the Galaxy XR headset, and what Google and Samsung are doing there. So interesting. Supercut, which is where I watch my Prime Video and my Netflix subscriptions through. It's just a really, really well put together app there. And then, as I said, from a creation point of view, as good as Final Cut Camera and Final Cut Pro are, Blackmagic Camera, non-subscription based, their 2.0 that released this year included remote camera control, which is brilliant if you've got multiple iPhones and you're looking to find a way of integrating your older phones into maybe a multicam setup, and something that's super portable as well. But what I love about this technology is it almost gave the camera companies a push, because they all have different apps now that allow you to control everything on your cameras and multiple cameras at the same time from your iPad. So Lumix from Panasonic, they have a fantastic app there that allows you to control and hit multiple recordings with one button, and so do Sony. So Blackmagic really have done something fantastic there, bringing something to iOS that really had only ever been available through lots of HDMI cables into one of their switchers, which are very expensive and are limited to 1080p. Whereas, of course, you're just triggering the record or the action, and then your camera, whatever it's capable of outputting, can do it. It's just mind-blowing to me, and I think one of the biggest highlights for this year for professionals, but also for people that are looking to finally act on their creative juices.
Yeah, very cool. That's a great pick and a great trend that you pointed out this year that I actually wasn't aware of, that the other camera makers were also integrating this into their apps. So, yeah, the rising tide lifts all ships, right? And making the experience better for everybody.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some features, though, from Apple in particular. And the ones that really grabbed me this year are surprisingly headlined by Apple Intelligence. Now, not necessarily the generative stuff that a lot of people have focused on when it comes to Apple Intelligence, but just two simple things for me: clean up in photos. Being able to get rid of that person that face bombed you when you were taking a beautiful photo of family. They're gone, right? Being able to get a screenshot of a trailer and get rid of the studio logo in the corner. Brilliant. There's lots of things that I've used cleanup for. I think it is the thing that I use most from Apple Intelligence right now. And the other thing I'd say is also the writing tools that came in with Apple Intelligence. Whilst they're not tools that you're going to write a whole article with, and I wouldn't even suggest writing a whole email to someone, if you're unsure of how you're coming across, and maybe you're in a stressful moment and you might be appearing a little curt that day, Apple Intelligence is able to kind of figure that out and help you along your way. So two great tools there, and very non-brand of me to praise Apple Intelligence on this network in particular. Where I really think praise needs to be put is the hearing aid capabilities on AirPods Pro 2. We've had a big old segment where we talked about the reasons why this is important. Going back to that phrase of a rising tide lifting all ships, that's what I think this feature on AirPods Pro 2 will finally do once it trickles down to the other AirPods lines, which it will do in the generations to come, I'm sure. But yeah, really, really fantastic. That, alongside the latest iteration of enhanced audio, but also on a FaceTime level for Apple TV. FaceTime persistent camera, very, very cool. That if you have an iOS device laying around doing nothing, maybe the camera's all that works on it, then you've got a camera that can be persistently attached to your Apple TV for FaceTime calls. And when you're in a call, the biggest thing for me, I think, in terms of meaningfulness on tvOS this year, was FaceTime calls having the addition of live captioning on Apple TV, and bringing that to the biggest screen that's available in the home really makes a huge difference. Especially, actually, if you're watching TV or film together and something's overpowering, you've got that live captioning going on as well. So it's not necessarily just an accessibility feature, but one that is very much universal.
Absolutely, and so well done, the live captioning and FaceTime. It's just good to see FaceTime getting so much love 2 years in a row on Apple TV. I mean, So impressive, and making it available to more and more people, of course, we always want to praise. For me, the biggest change in software this year has to be Control Center on my phone and iPads, and the ability to customize it. I've always wanted to be able to change those up. You could change them up a little bit in the past, but it was very limited in what you could do. No third-party support. Now you can just completely rearrange it like your home screen, make it however you want. And I'm still tinkering with mine. I'm continuing to make adjustments to figure out what works best for me. But just features that you need often enough that you want them handy, but not necessarily you want them on your home screen. I found that's absolutely perfect for Control Center. I've put all of my HomePods and my Apple TV in there as little tiles so that whatever I'm streaming on in the home, I can quickly go to Control Center and pull up the playback controls there. And that's actually a tip I got from Jonathan. He shared that in Club Mac Stories a couple months ago. And rather than having to go into the AirPlay tile and, control other speakers, you can just instantly get to the exact speaker that you want, which is great. I've done a ton of other stuff with Control Center. There's just so much you can do there, and it's a lot of fun to play with. The other one kind of actually goes along with that same theme, and it also ties back to my purchase of my new watch this year. One thing I've been doing quite a bit is using my watch to control my Apple TV using the remote app on the Apple Watch. Yeah. It got a nice revamp this year. It really is just full featured now, and it can do so many different things. Being able to control the volume of my TV by just rolling the digital crown a little bit feels like a superpower. And it really is just a great app, really well done. And the way they've added all that functionality onto that tiny screen, it's really great. So to me, that actually was a really impactful change, though it's just a tiny little screen and maybe not a feature that a ton of people use. When I'm on the floor with my son and we've got something going in the background and I need to adjust the volume, being able to do that without having to reach for the remote on my phone is really handy.
Very, very cool. And I guess also it means that you don't need to have the remote around so no one's grabbing it.
Exactly.
And hiding it. So, yeah, very cool. Very, very cool.
This is Magic Rays of Light, Sigmund. We've talked about tech, but we need to get into some films. I know you've watched a number of films this year. Do you want to disclose how many you've watched?
I have watched 93 feature films this year.
93.
Which is probably the most that I've watched in a year so far, alongside all of the original series and original films that we've seen as well. So it's a lot of viewing. I have 20 here. That I want to just very quickly call out because it just seems like the best way. So I'm going to do 10, then I'm going to talk about your highlights, and then I'll finish with my final 10. Does that sound cool?
Sounds great.
Okay. Number 20, A Different Man. This is a black satire of self-worth and self-image, starring Sebastian Stan and Adam Pearson. Just a fantastic, fantastic film. On 19 is Conclave. This is a masterfully put together film from Edward Berger, diving into a power struggle at the heart of the Catholic Church. Honestly, quite a silly romp, but a good one overall. Number 18, Civil War, Alex Garland's vision of a future America ravaged by conflict. And despite the AI slop that was used to promote the film, this was the most stress-induced I've been in a theatre this year. Pitch black it was. It's brilliantly captured through the lens of war journalists, to which this was more in tribute to than any particular leaning political sentiment, which I think was fantastic. At number 17 is Janet Planet. This marks the arrival of Pulitzer Prize winner Annie Baker. And it's about the relationship between a mother and her young daughter, and it features my favourite line from this year from an 11-year-old Lacey that says, "You know what's funny? Every single moment of my life is hell."
Oh, well.
Number 16, Furiosa, George Miller's loud, dirty, and very dusty, visceral origin story. of the fearsome interpreter Furiosa from the Mad Max trilogy. Fantastic. Will give your speakers a workout for sure, whether they're HomePods or a full Atmos setup. At number 15 is Union. Now, I don't know where you can actually find this. I got to check out a limited screening of this film, but for certain it's not going to be on Amazon Prime Video and currently isn't anywhere to be seen on the Apple TV app, but it needs proper distribution. This is from Brett Story and Stephen Mang, who follow the day-to-day struggles of the ALU, made up of current and former Amazon employees, capturing the events that led to a remarkable but by no means conclusive historical moment when it comes to unions, and that happened in 2022. And number 14 is Robot Dreams. It's my only animation on this list, which is going to be a shock to some. It's about a dog that creates a robot friend for himself. And this is Pablo Berger's intricate, amazing silent animation, which means that it's able to transcend all barriers when it comes to language. Very, very funny. The artistic style is impeccable. At number 13, Love Lies Bleeding. This is Kristen Stewart and Katie O'Brien, and they're on fire as star-crossed lovers who get into a sweaty mess in Rose Glass's 80s throwback thriller, and it's brilliant. Rose Glass, definitely a director to watch in 2025 and beyond. Now, we talked about AI a little bit already in this show, and of course artificial intelligence that I think is going to define 2024 in some ways. Number 12 is Eno. This is a groundbreaking generative documentary about visionary musician and artist Brian Eno, and it's a film that's different every time it's shown, with 52 quintillion possible iterations, so that no viewing is the same twice. Just a really, really cool documentary, but who knows, maybe the version that you see on my recommendations just terrible. But yeah, I thought it was really, really well done, and actually, you know, quite historical in that regard as well. And for now, number 11 is Perfect Days. This is a Wim Wenders film about a content toilet cleaner in Tokyo. It's a wonderful depiction of someone finding beauty in the world whilst reflecting on cassette tapes, books, and taking photos of trees. I watched this in the garden during the summer months on my Apple Vision Pro. One of my favourite experiences, elevated by its 4:3 aspect ratio presentation, and that in itself is a nod to the work of Japanese director Yasuro Uzo, who Wenders considers his late idol and mentor. So they are 20 through 11. I don't know if you've been able to see any of these yet, Devon, or if any of them were highlights for you.
I have not been able to check out any of these yet. I actually checked my collections just now. I've watched more films this year than I thought. I've watched 26, but I've actually been boosting that quite a bit the past few weeks with Christmas movies, so it may be a little bit on the later end, skewing for 2024 for me in movie watching. I did get out to the theaters once this year. I feel like that's going to start to become more a part of my life as my son gets older. We're a little more comfortable leaving him, with babysitters and family for longer periods of time. But my movie watching was mostly at home this year. It started with a film that I really enjoyed on Hulu called Self-Reliance by Jake Johnson, also starring Anna Kendrick. This was an excellent film and a great start to the 2024 movie watching for me, about a guy who is put into this kind of like very odd real-life game show where he could win a lot of money, but he could also lose his life because there's people trying to attack him if he's ever alone. So he has to spend the entire film in the presence of another person. And it leads to some hilarious moments, but it also made me think quite a bit about, loneliness and the need that we all have for other people. So I think Jake Johnson, he does a great job of kind of towing that line between funny and thoughtful, and he really nailed it with this film that he directed and starred in.
I can't believe that was in 2024 and is one that just completely flew under the radar after we really gave its plaudits at the beginning of the year. That's insane.
Yeah, well, a year's a long time, Sigmund, and you've watched a lot of movies since then, so it's totally fair. Now, I ended my movie watching year, in terms of non-Christmas movies anyway, with my first trip to the theaters in quite some time to see Wicked Part 1, a film I've been waiting so long for. I've been a fan of Wicked for just forever. I was a theater kid growing up, so it's just one of those top tier shows in my mind. And of course, when something you love is adapted, there's always the fear that it's going to be terrible, or it's not going to capture the original, or you're just not going to agree with something. But this film, just everything about it, I just adored. John M. Chu did an amazing job, from the casting to the choreography to the editing, keeping the essential elements in there while also embracing, of course, the magic of movie making and all that you can do there. So yeah, just an amazing experience. I love musicals, of course, but seeing a musical so successfully adapted to a film in a way that captures so many people's imaginations. And by the way, this is only part 1. Part 2 is coming next year with an awesome title, For Good, which is just awesome. It was an incredible movie, and I was so happy that I was able to see that on the big screen and experience it in that way.
Yeah, we talked about it just a couple of weeks ago. I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was a great experience from a cinematic standpoint. And often when people talk about part 1, you think, oh no, this feels incomplete and I'm seeing half a story. You're seeing a complete story with this part 1. It is brilliantly put together. And yeah, a great pick. Anything else?
One more. It's a film that you might have heard of if you listen to this show. Apple original film Wolves, which came out not too long ago on Apple TV Plus. This was a really fun film for me, of course, about two fixers assigned to the same job. I laughed in this film way more than I thought I would. Of course, you get Brad Pitt and George Clooney together. There's great chemistry. The action was awesome. John Watts, as a director, did a great job leading it up. And yeah, this was at home. This was the closest I felt to being in the theater this year. Just in terms of the laughs and just the experience of watching this on Apple TV Plus, it gave me that movie going experience that I so yearned for, and this was one that I enjoyed a lot. So, for me, it's in my top 3 films this year. Of course, the ending of that whole saga, at least as it stands now, is not a happy one, but the film itself, I have to say, I think it really holds up and stands well.
Yeah, I agree. I'd say from a Apple original film standpoint, Fancy Dance, some of the documentary work that was done this year, especially at the end with The Last of the Sea Women and Bread and Roses, fantastic documentaries there. But in my top 10 are no Apple original films. When you're talking about magical filmmaking, though, my number 10 is, I feel, very much in akin to Wicked. It could be like a double bill in a very, very strange way. I saw The TV Glow. It's unconventional filmmaking that is an allegory to identity without hitting it too firmly on the nose. It is daring filmmaking with a great crescendo and a great cast. The use of colour in this is what I'm kind of getting to when it comes to a double bill with Wicked. I just feel like this is perfect. So yeah, definitely check out I Saw the TV Glow. Number 9, one of my favourite theatrical experiences this year, Dune Part 2. Excellent filmmaking, as always, from Denis Villeneuve, that didn't outstay its welcome despite a near 3-hour runtime. It flew by, though if I'm honest, it was the score from Hans Zimmer that really had me on the edge of my seat. So yeah, a great experience there. Going back to our at-home experience, number 8 on my top 10 is Evil Does Not Exist. This is Ryusuke Hamaguchi's Drive My Car follow-up, an ecological drama about a small mountain village threatened by new development. It's a horror movie without being a horror movie, and it's really not until this film gets going that it reveals what it truly is, a glacial depiction of the gulf between capitalism and environmentalism. And yes, press play on this and definitely stay with it. Number 7, Red Room's eerie, exacting filmmaking from Pascal Plante in a haunting drama that examines the dark reality of the true crime industrial complex and the decay of modern society. It is chilling. One of the bravest films to come out this year. Definitely not for the faint of heart. Definitely asks a lot of really important questions. And yeah, just brilliant. Red Rooms at number 7. And number 6 is Rebel Ridge from Jeremy Saulnier, as he returns with a flinty, restrained crime conspiracy thriller exploring small-town police corruption and the one guy who they should never have messed with. It is a mix of small-town conspiracy, and what you get is lead Aaron Pierre throwing cops around like ragdolls. It is fantastic. Some of the shots here, including some of the driving shots, are just mesmerizing, and I'm so happy to see this director back after bringing to screen one of my favorite films of all time, Blue Ruin, from just over 10 years ago. And number 5 is a film that was recommended by our good friend and occasional co-host on Magic Rays of Light, Jonathan Reed, and that is Anora. This is a film in 3 parts, a Cinderella story that morphs into Martin Scorsese's After Hours and comes out at the end to be a dramedy, and it leaves you reeling throughout for Mikey Madison's lead character, of course Anora, the name of the film. This is the latest from Sean Baker, and honestly he's come a long way from his debut film shot on 3 iPhone 5S cameras. Number 4, I think this is one that I'm pretty sure was on your list to watch, and I'm hoping it will be, and that is Challengers. It's like a tennis drama on the surface, and a love triangle, and it's brilliant throughout. There are some crazy artistic directions that are taken here from Luca Guadagnino. There's an unrelenting dance soundtrack from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who we'll soon hear from again in The Gorge. Yeah, honestly, just brilliant direction from Luca Guadagnino and a brilliant cast, including Zendaya. So, Challengers came at the beginning of the year. Number 3 is Juror, number 2, which only just released on Max literally weeks ago. It is a courtroom drama from Clint Eastwood, who in his 90s continues to pick away at the frailties of some of the biggest establishments in the structure of our modern world. And it's a fantastic film. If you watched Presumed Innocent on Apple TV Plus earlier this year and you're looking for more of that, you're going to get that here in a bite-sized chunk, because it's just a 2-hour film, beginning, middle and end. So highly recommend Juror number 2. And that brings me to number 2, The Brutalist. It's hit theatres now. I'm not too sure when it's going to arrive in the Apple TV app, but I'd imagine right as we get to the crux of the Academy Awards later in 2025. This is the Godfather trilogy smooshed into one film with all the elements you would want from a theatrical experience. Great sound, image, lighting, and performance. I'm going to say it now. Do not wait for the TV app. If you have this screening somewhere, go and see it. The cinematography, the performance, just everything about this film is top grade. And it nearly made it to number one. And then I remembered one film that not only did I think was technically brilliantly made, really well written, but it touched me to my core. And that is A Real Pain. This is directed and starring Jesse Eisenberg alongside Kieran Culkin. It's a road movie that follows cousins Benji and David on a tour of Poland, undertaken to honour both their Jewish heritage and their recently deceased grandmother. The pair are polar opposites. Benji navigates the world with a carefreeness that is both charming and jarring, whilst David possesses a tense stoicness that seems to weigh him down. I laughed, I cried in equal measure, and I'll say this, Devon, I was also left feeling a little numb at one moment of this film. It speaks the truth about generational trauma. You know, we are still very much a world at war, and I can say that thankfully, you know, from a safe space that we're both in. And that trauma carries on through generations, right? Whether we know it or not. In something as simple as feeling guilt that comes with living a comfortable life in a generation removed from the trials of your ancestors. That just really touched me in a way that no other film has. There are some that are more bombastic, more flashy. This just really has a heart and soul in it that has reverberated through me ever since the final credit at its screening at London Film Festival. And A Real Pain. Two meanings to that title, but number one on my films of 2024.
And that is high praise coming from you, Sigmund, so definitely one not to miss. I'm going to put this on my watch list, as well as several from your top 20 list, because, as I said, I've missed all of these, and these all sound like really great picks. And yeah, just an awesome list that you put together here that, of course, we'll link in the show notes for anyone who wants to see it in text and be able to link to all these if you want to watch some of these yourself. But I'd say pretty great year for movies, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, there's been a little bit of conjecture recently, thanks to Quentin Tarantino, who was kind of pitting TV shows against movies and saying why movies were better than TV shows and were more memorable. Whilst I agree to an extent, I think this year was also a really, really strong year for TV shows.
Yeah, I'd say so. Not only Apple Originals, which we'll get into in a little bit, but just for TV in general, there was so much great stuff to watch. So much so that we probably missed a lot of it, but we both have picks of things that we really, really enjoyed. I'll kick us off with probably an obvious pick, but my favorite show this year was The Acolyte on Disney+. Star Wars show. Pretty theatrical, I'd say, in kind of its structure. And, you know, it felt like a movie that has been split up into a TV series, but I thought it worked episodic as well. There was some interesting stuff there about kind of the history of some of the things that we've seen in the Star Wars trilogies. And I thought it was a really fun one. It was a great kind of conversation piece for the time that it was rolling out. Lots of opinions. You know, Star Wars fans always have their opinions that they have to share, of course. Not one that we're going to be seeing more of, but even knowing that it's not coming back, I would say still worth watching if you're into Star Wars at all and learning more about especially the dark side of the Force and, you know, the journey that someone could go on in that direction. So that was a show that I really enjoyed. Quiet on Set was a docu-series that I believe aired on Investigation Discovery here in the United States, but it streams on Max. And it was about the dark side of 90s TV. as a kid who grew up in the 90s and watched these shows, it's a lot of Nickelodeon stuff in this one, just because that's the people they could talk to. But just some of the things that these actors that I love so much growing up went through, and kind of how they reflect back on it now. Of course, it's not all bad. They had some positive things to say about certain aspects of young stardom and things like that. But of course, this was also the moment that Drake Bell came out to the world and identified himself as being a survivor of sexual abuse as a child, and some of the things that he went through. And I was a big Drake Bell fan growing up, so seeing him be brave in that way and really share with the world his experience and hopefully make the world better for future generations of young actors, it was a really impactful show for me. The word enjoy may not be the right one for it, but it was an important show. And really, as someone who grew up during that time and enjoyed a lot of the series that are kind of touched on, it was one that I thought was worth watching. Finally, a show that probably made my list last year as well, but it keeps just delivering, and one that it'll probably stay on my list until it goes away, honestly, is Only Murders in the Building. I feel like every year this show just keeps delivering for us. Of course, I watch it on Hulu. I believe it's on Disney Plus internationally. But Selena Gomez, Steve Martin, Martin Short. This year, a whole bunch of great guests. Again, just taking the show into a new context, but keeping true to that murder mystery. And, of course, there's always podcast jokes in there, which I enjoy. So, yeah, it's on season 4. They're working on season 5 now. It doesn't seem like it's slowing down at all. But to me, the quality is still high, and that's why it's one of my favorite shows of the year.
Yeah, I didn't pick season 3 in my list last year because I felt like it fell off a little bit. Season 4 really back to its best, I think. And looking forward to future seasons. Some great picks there, Devon. I'm going to be very short and brief on the TV shows because I went on a little bit when it came to films. So I'm going to just list a bunch of shows that you should add to your Up Next queue straight away. Industry on Max, its 3rd season, phenomenal. Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Prime Video, based off of the film starring Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, this time starring Donald Glover and Maya Erskine. Just really, really funny. Gives you all of the tropes from the film about two people that don't know one another, that are now having to pretend to be a married couple, and that line and reality blurs whilst they're having to complete missions. A crazy supporting cast here that I'm not going to ruin for you. Just absolutely outstanding stuff. Also, English Teacher on Hulu and Disney Plus internationally. One of the best new comedies, really heartfelt, about an English teacher who's gay, just trying to live his life whilst doing his job. The Penguin on Max, Colin Farrell in full penguin getup. This is a follow-on from the Batman from a few years ago. Just incredible storytelling throughout its 8 episodes. A Man on the Inside on Netflix featuring Ted Danson. I've recommended this a couple of times already on the podcast, and it only came out in October, so highly, highly recommend. Has already been secured for a 2nd season. And then we've got The Day of the Jackal on Peacock. Again, another recent recommendation from me. Just an outstanding crime thriller that I have yet to see the finale to. Just haven't had time, but we'll be getting to that later on this weekend, I think. And lastly, as a feel-good TV show, one that I enjoyed every moment of. It stars Kristen Bell, but it's written and starring Adam Brody in a return, really. I don't think I've seen Adam Brody properly since The OC, which is a highlight for me. I actually bought the box set recently, but this is about an agnostic sex podcaster played by Kristen Bell and a newly single rabbi played by Adam Brody, as they fall in love, discovering if their relationship will survive their wildly different lives and meddling families. And it's just very, very funny, very sweet, and has the occasional flair of edge. So they are my TV show picks for the year. But that doesn't end, because we've got to talk about Apple Originals. This has been a real stellar year for Apple Originals when it comes to original series. I don't know where do we start here without listing pretty much every show that aired this year, bar maybe a few.
It's tough because there's so many great ones this year. I really struggled to kind of whittle mine down to just a few. I ended up with 5. I'm going to start with Palm Royale. I think was my biggest surprise this year. I had no idea what to expect going in with this one, but I mean, it just really nailed so many things for me. The Florida setting, actually maybe a little bit of a theme for my picks, but it works so well. The chaotic energy, it just really worked for me. And I mean, come on, Ricky Martin, how could you not love that, right? Natalie Portman in Lady in the Lake, another surprise for me, but a show that just had me riveted and on the edge of my seat the entire time. So good. Then I have to shout out Bad Monkey with a little asterisk. The finale did not do it for me. Thankfully, the show is going to live on, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But leading up to the finale, the entire show, I love so much. And again, it was one that it wasn't what I was expecting. I think maybe sometimes I go into these shows and I have this idea of what it's going to be, and then it just takes it in a totally different direction, and that delights me in a way.
Some great picks. And it's interesting that there isn't a lot of crossover between what we've picked, because my picks are Pachinko, its second season, incredible. Dark Matter, which I thought was fantastic, and it stood on its own as a season. Enthralling storytelling throughout. I loved the mystery, and I loved what was eventually revealed. We've had lots of international fare on Apple TV Plus. I really enjoyed La Maison. It doesn't get talked about enough. I highly, highly recommend you check it out. In terms of limited series, though, I think that's where I found my solace this year. Because not only did we get the greats like Lady in the Lake, which was fantastic, we also got Manhunt, which is a show that we talked about at the beginning of the year. Everyone had a lot of hype for it, and then it kind of came and went, and no one had really given it its plaudits since. So Manhunt, I think, one of the highlights for this year. But the biggest highlight when it comes to limited series on Apple TV Plus for me, and I think for you as well, is Alfonso Cuarón's first venture into original series, and that is Disclaimer.
Yes, Disclaimer, a show that I still think about in terms of the themes and where it ended, and just something that I feel like I have a lot to learn from still, even as I'm still processing it. But a show that just week to week had me constantly just thinking about what was going to happen next, trying to predict, and just trying to get into the point of views of these characters who are so different from me, but at the same time going through things that I feel like in a lot of ways people can relate to, and again, I think learn from in very profound ways. So the storytelling was incredible, the cinematography just next level, and everything about it I just adored. So yeah, Disclaimer, short series, 7 episodes, not a lot of time, but such effective use of that time in a way that just really stuck with me. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, very much so. I was watching the news the other day, and I don't often watch the news, and immediately I thought about how people are portrayed in the media and sometimes in books. So yeah, it's definitely a series that replays on me again and again and again, and definitely one that I want to revisit at some point if we ever get the time, Devon. Very quickly, return of the year. I think we both have the same here. We'll count down from 3, 2, 1.
Shrinking. Hey.
There we go.
Absolutely. Shrinking season 2, just everything we loved about the first season, but even more of it, and a show that I hope lives on for years and years to come.
And on a little bit of a negative path, the cancellation that shouldn't have been. There's been a few, Devon. We had a few private moments where I had to break to you that another show that we loved has gone. Where do you want to go with this one? Because I will tell you, first off, the Big Door Prize I know was quite sad because it was a story that we wanted to see finished on screen. It didn't. And the big one for me was Sunny because it left on such a cliffhanger and I was really excited to see where it was going to go. I think from an artistic direction as well, just one of the wildest outputs that we saw from Apple Originals this year. And another original series collaboration between Apple and A24 that just didn't last.
Yeah, Sunny was so unique, and it's disappointing that we're not going to see the end of that story and how that whole storyline played out. For me, the one that just hit really hard because I'd been such a fan of the show, recommended it to people, but I just feel like as a single season that's not a complete story, it's actually not worth investing in, unfortunately, in hindsight. And that's Constellation, a show that I enjoyed the structure of it so well. I enjoyed the sci-fi elements, kind of the figuring out the rules of how it all worked and everything. I thought that was great.
Devon, did you ever figure it out?
Well, I remember your theory and, thinking, okay, I've got to try to consider Sigmund's theory in the second season. But, we didn't have a chance to really test it. I feel like I had a grasp on it. But again, the show didn't continue and isn't going to continue. So we have no way of knowing if either of us was actually right? The show threw out some really awesome teases that, to me, just felt like almost like Lost level kind of foreshadowing. And then just, again, we're never going to find out what that meant because the show's not continuing. So very much a disappointment. We'll link to it. But again, I'm just going to say that honestly, without that payoff, I don't find that one was worth it. Some shows like Sunny, Big Door Prize, I can enjoy those for what they were, I feel like. But Constellation, just with all the setup, it just feels like a disappointment that it's not going to carry on. Overall, a great year for Apple Originals. Very strong, and 2025 is shaping up to be even stronger. We've got some wild stuff that we get to cover early next year that we can't wait for. Let's talk about music for a minute. We both have some highlights we want to share for this year. No surprise for me, my favorite album this year was F1 Trillion by Post Malone. Listening to a lot of country lately, Sigmund, mostly Post Malone, but I mean, it's just really gotten its hooks into me, and even got my son kind of picking up on some of the stray lines there every once in a while, which is fun. Taylor Swift put out Tortured Poets Department, which is another highlight for me in terms of albums. And then kind of a weird one, but one that I really enjoyed. This was an album from Disney where they commissioned certain pop punk artists to cover Disney classics. It's called A Whole New Sound. It's basically like Punk Goes Crunk, but Disney. And I loved every bit of it. And some of my favorite artists are featured on that album doing some songs from my childhood and more recent Disney movies as well. So a lot of fun.
Oh, that album, Punk Goes Crunk, features Set Your Goals, Put Your Hoods Up. And I'm so happy because Set Your Goals have just announced that they're reforming. And so I'm really hopeful that I get to see them. But I thought it was interesting in your musical picks, Tortured Poets Department by Taylor Swift, partially co-written by Post Malone. So yeah, so very, very cool. My year in music's been quite eclectic. My artist of the year was Kendrick Lamar. His album recently dropped, but actually his whole feud with Drake and the work that he put into that was just out of this world. And I'm really looking forward to Kendrick Lamar's artistic output when it comes to the halftime show at the Super Bowl at the beginning of next year. But from an artistic point of view, from the album to the music videos, the whole rollout, Blue Lips by Schoolboy Q, an incredible album by an incredible artist that people, if you know, but a lot of people don't. So I highly recommend. Then we've got Hyperdrama by Justice. Justice, their music was everywhere when it came to the Paris Olympics, so that was very, very cool to see their new album release. The Great Impersonator by Halsey, very, very cool. Only One Mode by Speed, this cool like hardcore punk band. I think they're out of Australia. Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft, superb, as was the soundtrack by Phineas for Disclaimer. And then when it comes to soundtracks, the Challengers original soundtrack by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross is something that I have played throughout the year since seeing that film in theatres. Oh, and the latest album from Knocked Loose. And for the Oasis fans out there, all very, very excited about seeing Noel and Liam in their 50s playing their last probably ever set of shows around the world. I want to give you a heads up on a band that kind of mix hardcore and punk along with like indie rock and has a bit of an Oasis tinge to it. The band is called High Vis. And the album that I discovered the band by was released this year. It's called Guided Tour. One of my favourite musical discoveries this year. And yeah, it comes highly, highly recommended.
Some great music picks there. We're going to round out our recap of 2024 with games. My pick is Jetpack Joyride 2.
On Apple Vision Pro, right?
Of course. Yeah, actually, it was a lot of fun on Apple Vision Pro. We joke about it. I'm not the biggest gamer. I haven't had a lot of time for picking up a lot of video games this year. I'm still playing the Wheel of Fortune daily. I don't know if you're still into that or not, but I'm very much enjoying that one.
Yeah, I occasionally dip into it, but Apple Arcade for me has been all about Balatro Plus, Punch Kick Duck Plus, which is a really, really simple game, but it reminded me of games like Streets of Rage and the kind of 2D scrolling punch someone, move out the way, punch another person. A lot of fun, but with ducks and animals. Great stuff. And Puyo Puyo Puzzle Pop, not anything new, but really happy to see it come to Apple Arcade. My game, though, of the year, and really, is it of this year? It's of many years ago, but it finally came to iPad OS and Mac OS this year, and that is Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding. Plus, I'm kind of reintroducing myself to Hideo Kojima's previous work. I never finished Metal Gear Solid 3 or 4. So, yeah, looking forward to checking out more of his work in hopefully 2025, but you never know. It might be 2026, 2027.
Well, regardless, it was a great year for media, tech, film, shows. Lots of awesome picks here. We hope everyone had fun revisiting the year with us. Maybe there's a pick or two in there that you missed this year that you can fill in on your holiday break and maybe add it to your list as well. So that's the year that's been, but let's talk about the week that was, because there was lots of news that came out this week in the world of Apple TV as well. Starting with the big one, Mark Gurman reports that both a new Apple TV and a new HomePod Mini are set for release next year. This news comes as part of Gurman's report on Apple's development of an in-house Wi-Fi and Bluetooth chip codenamed Proxima that will debut on the two devices before expanding to the iPhone later in the year. So it's interesting. The news that everyone was talking about was kind of this chip that Apple's working on, which is a big deal. I mean, for Apple to make their own Bluetooth and Wi-Fi chip, that's awesome. But we're finally getting some more hints that a new Apple TV could be coming next year, something that we've been looking forward to for quite some time.
We've been looking forward to all year in 2024 because no hardware came, despite some reports from one Mark Gurman. That said, I'm excited about this news. It's always nice to see new things come to our platform of choice first. So very, very cool there. One thing that might be coming to the next Apple TV as well that we wanted to mention very quickly. It's something that was picked out by listener Jake Adams.
We had an interesting theory about why this Apple TV that we've heard rumored is waiting until it is. It could have to do with this Proxima chip, which it seems like that's a part of it. But Jake also said that there's rumors about HDMI 2.2 being revealed at CES in January, potentially January 6th. And that if Apple is going to be including HDMI 2.2 in this new Apple TV, that would make sense why it could be coming in the spring. HDMI 2.2, interesting addition to the HDMI spec. It's going to bring some higher frame rates. It's going to bring more support for 8K content. And my question is, if that's the reason Apple's waiting to release this Apple TV, which seems like it very well could be, how do they pitch that to consumers, to someone like, why would you upgrade your Apple TV 4K second or third gen to this new device? Is this the Apple TV 8K, or is this higher refresh rates, which they have sold as a user-facing feature before when it went to 60 hertz? Is that what we're going for here?
I really don't know. I won't know until the specs are revealed the day before CES on January 6th. I would imagine that this spec isn't going to come to everything straight away. And so I would be surprised if this was already ready for Apple TV. What we do know about the HDMI 2.2 spec at the moment is that it's going to require new cables, but not necessarily new hardware.
Oh,
so
okay.
We'll have to wait and see. A great take there by Jake. So, yeah, we'll know the next time we're on this podcast. At least from the spec point of view.
Yeah, it's exciting to think we'll have a new HDMI spec the next time we chat. That's awesome.
Now, one thing that I am super, super excited about, which was announced earlier this year, but we didn't really get any detail, Blackmagic Design. We've mentioned them already on this podcast once, but it really has been a great collaborative year between Apple and Blackmagic. It was revealed this week that it's Ursa Cine Immersive Camera for recording Apple Immersive Video, the first commercially available camera designed to capture the format, will release late in Q1 2025 to a select group of production houses and filmmakers. The camera is available right now to pre-order for $29,995. On board is dual custom lenses with capture for stereoscopic 3D immersive video at a resolution of 8160 by 7200 at 90 frames per second, with up to 2 hours of Blackmagic raw immersive capture on the included 8TB media module. And to move all of that data, of course, it needs a 10 gig Ethernet port for saving footage to the cloud. Now, that's only one part of the story, because DaVinci Resolve Studio will be updated in Q1 next year to support Apple Immersive Video monitoring and editing on not only normal 2D displays, like we've seen in the behind-the-scenes look at Submerged just a few months ago, but you're also going to be able to play back in real time on an Apple Vision Pro as well, which is very, very cool. My question, though, is how powerful is your MacBook going to have to be? I'm guessing the M4 iPad Pros aren't going to be able to deal with this kind of data either. Do you have any thoughts on that part of the equation?
I can't even imagine the processing power required to deal with this footage and edit it, and even with proxy footage. But exporting would just be wild. So yeah, I imagine you're going to want as much processing power as available to you. I don't think they revealed what computers they were actually using on Submerged. That would be a really interesting detail to know for sure. But to me, this news is exciting just because it was promised for the end of the year, and we're getting the news now. It's a real thing. It's still fascinates me the way we hear about products, we think about them, we hear rumors about them, but then all of a sudden you see, okay, this is a real thing. It's a camera that you can hold and pick up and attach to a tripod if you want to. Like it's compatible with the existing ecosystem of, camera hardware and things like that. It's amazing how real this is, and how, $30,000 is not cheap for a camera, but it is something that is going to be accessible to bigger film houses and eventually down to smaller creators as well. Maybe even as a rental eventually, which would be amazing.
Well, that's the thing, right? So I think cameras like this normally like, I don't know, 3,000 a day in terms of rental, right? Maybe 1,500, because it's all in the one package.
Uh-huh.
So that'll be interesting. They have also mentioned that this camera is going to roll out to consumers that have that expenditure and want to try this style of filmmaking later in 2025. And it made me kind of think, I wonder if this is a worthwhile investment, right? I get this camera, I go and travel to some amazing places, capture some incredible B-roll for other people's immersive productions, and then sell that B-roll in that format.
It very well could be a business or a couple businesses. I mean, there's going to be lots of demand, I think, for this sort of thing as the format grows, and it's going to be a slower rollout in terms of who's going to have access to it. So whoever does, it is going to be, I imagine, a very profitable endeavor and one that they're going to want to take full advantage of. Well, let's stick in the world of immersion for a little bit and talk about a couple of Vision Pro accessories that came to the Apple Store this week. Medical solutions company ResMed has released the Contour head strap for Apple Vision Pro, specifically designed for comfortable extended use. The strap comes with 6 removable counterweights, costs $120, and is available to order exclusively from the Apple Store. Now, I believe in the US, it's either sold out or otherwise listed as unavailable right now, so it's not something that you can really get your hands on in the US, but I heard about a certain podcaster who maybe got their hands on one recently.
I did. I ordered it straight away. It arrived the next day. I've been trying it. First off, really soft, great materials. I love, first off, where these straps are positioned. I love the additional support that I get. And I am now very happy to lay down and watch something on the ceiling like was pitched to us many, many months ago by Apple. And I don't get pressure, and even if I've got it on my face for 5 or 6 hours straight, which it has been, I'm not getting Vision Pro marks on my face with this strap.
Wow.
Now, there is a lot of customizability, and I think it will take a little bit of time, maybe a day or so, to find the right fit for you. The counterweights are very ingenuitive in the sense that they just attach with magnets. There are little magnets in the strap as well, in which they attach to. I have found no need for these counterweights, although very, very cool that they have instructions on where to place them should you need them, and depending on where the pressure is on your head when wearing Apple Vision Pro. So it's expensive. I'm glad I've got it. I'm wondering what I'm going to do with the Belkin top strap now, because this is definitely now my favourite way to go. And yeah, not available internationally either. I think I got in there right at the right time. I was going to wait a couple of days and then just pick it up from my local store, because it was saying it's going to be available for pickup on Tuesday. And I decided, no, I'm not going to wait. And I'm glad I didn't, because I think they had limited inventory initially, and it's all gone now. So, yeah, lots of demand. It shows, I think, that the people that did buy Apple Vision Pro, they're still searching out different varieties in which to wear it for a long time. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? People want to wear this for longer than I think other people are reporting, and it might just be that comfort level once the comfort level is sorted, like I believe it is for me, I think we could see the numbers go up.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it just shows the breadth of also the accessories that are needed for a device like this that's so personal, and it's great that the product's already doing that well, and hopefully they'll get some more batches out so that more people can experience that same comfort that you are. Also available exclusively from the Apple Store is Von Holhausen's new Carry Sling for Apple Vision Pro. The ultra-portable shoulder bag is made from bamboo, a plant-based material created from bamboo. It features a padded interior and a dedicated battery slot, and it costs $180. The theme with Vision Pro accessories, you're going to pay for them, but this is a very nice-looking bag. The pictures are very impressive. This seems like something I would love to carry. My only kind of quibble with it is that you have to take the strap off to put the Vision Pro in it, which is a trade-off for getting the bag as small as possible. I don't know if that's something I would be willing to do. I haven't really tried it.
I'm definitely looking for an alternative to my Apple Vision Pro travel case. It was a great idea at the time. I'm glad I have it because it looks so cool, but not very usable. I've definitely got the Belkin bag on my Christmas wish list, so we'll see what happens. Who knows, Devon, maybe you'll have one as well under the tree.
Matching Belkin bags for Christmas. That sounds fun.
Let's go.
In app news, Apple's Sports app for iPhone was updated this week with a host of new features, including the ability to see which teams qualify for the postseason and league standings, a new play-by-play tab to catch up on key plays, pre-game lineups for soccer and baseball games, and this is really interesting, scheduled live activities so you can preemptively opt into having a game scorecard appear on your lock screen when it begins. So normally live activities have to be started in the moment. It's created by an action that you're doing, and then it goes into your dynamic island or your lock screen. But this is, as far as I know, a new functionality that's exclusive to the Sports app that you can actually tell it, hey, when this starts, I want the live activity to go ahead and show up. I would love to see this come to more developers. I know my day planning app Structured has live activity support, but again, you have to go in after the event has started and start the live activity. I would love to be able to mark things in my day plan, like, okay, have a live activity for this, but not this, and then this. So yeah, maybe this is a little bit of a preview of something that's coming for developers soon, but regardless, it's very, very cool.
As a sports fan, the thing that I really wanted this week after Manchester United beat Manchester City in the last 5 minutes by scoring 2 goals, oh, what a Sunday that was, is I wish there was a way of keeping the score from a live activity on display for the period between the previous game and the next game, especially if we win, right? If I win, I want it there every time just to keep me smiling. Yeah. Especially against a rival.
Like a pin lived activity. That would be cool.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, moving from sports to fitness, if you're an Apple Fitness Plus subscriber or you use your Apple Watch to work out, there's this new app called Fitness Wrap by On Labs that offers shareable insights into your workouts for the year. As we're all doing our year-end wrap-ups, this is a very cool way to just very quickly privately access your health kit data and give you insights into what you've been doing this year. I've been doing a lot of walking this year, which I'm pretty proud of. I didn't do a ton of like different kinds of exercises, but the walking was doing pretty good based on what I saw in this app.
Let's talk about some Apple original news. Of course, Silo has been officially renewed for a 3rd and 4th season on Apple TV Plus, telling the complete story of Hugh Howey's book trilogy. This is a story that was originally, I believe, at HBO, and a couple of times there was a full start. It didn't go ahead. And so it's great to see how successful Silo has become for Apple. There was recently a conversation between Rebecca Ferguson and Tim Cook on the set of season 3, currently happening in the UK. And yeah, super, super cool to see. My theory, though, is that both season 3 and 4 are filming back to back right now. Haven't heard confirmation of that officially anywhere, but kind of makes sense along with the announcement, right?
I think Rebecca Ferguson speculated that could be the case at one point, but that was before season 3 production actually started, so we haven't heard for sure, but it makes sense to me, and it would make sense with the renewal news coming like this. What excited me most about this is I realized we're less than halfway through Silo, and we're guaranteed to get to the finish line. There's no anxiety about it not being renewed now, so we can just enjoy the story, bask in it, and just savor it for the next 2.5 seasons that we have coming up.
Now, when it comes to release news, there's a film that I was going to add to my list, but it was a film that I'd seen but hadn't officially been given a release or a distributor, so I didn't. And then this week, that particular film was picked up by Apple Original Films, and that is All of You.
Well, this one comes from director William Bridges, who is a longtime collaborator with Brett Goldstein, who is himself a longtime collaborator with Apple TV+. It's based on a short story from all the way back in 2013. Here's a synopsis for the film. When an exciting new test matching soulmates together comes between two best friends, they spend the next 12 years trying to resist the urge to disrupt the paths their lives have taken, marriage, children, and tragedy, despite the undeniable feeling they belong together. I know you had a lot of good things to say about this one after seeing it at London Film Festival. Maybe on screen, but definitely behind the scenes, you told me this felt like something that would be a good match for Apple. And so I'm going to give you your props for kind of predicting that Apple would pick this up after the film festival. This is giving me kind of Fingernails vibes in terms of plot, but maybe a little bit different in terms of tone. But I'm going to watch anything Brett Goldstein does. He's earned my trust not only as an actor, but just as a creative. And him teaming up with Apple again, nothing but good can come from that in my eyes.
I think in tone, very familiar, but British, right?
Right.
and there's some really great supporting performances here as well, that we will get into when this finally does come to Apple screens and Apple TV Plus. Yeah, I had an absolute blast watching this. It was one of my highlights from London Film Festival. I was laughing one moment and not just crying, but absolutely blubbing the next, and then laughing. Absolutely destroyed me, put me right through the ringer. But yeah, I think very, very funny. Brett Goldstein, of course, has a particular charm that he brings. And there is a little bit of the dynamic that Brett Goldstein's character in Shrinking has with his partner in the flashback sequences, that very, very akin to what you see here between him and Imogen Poots. So if you love that, I think you're going to love this even more. All of You, coming soon to Apple TV Plus, and a great move towards, I think, more independent pickups from Apple Original Films. Yeah, good stuff.
Continuing with release news, the documentary that was announced last week, Deaf President Now, will make its debut at Sundance Film Festival early next year, with online public screenings taking place January 30th through February 2nd. You can also watch a Meet the Artist short with Niall DeMarco, one of the filmmakers, as he explains what inspired him to bring the story to the big screen. So it's cool to get more details about that film that was announced by Apple last week without any dates, but if you're going to Sundance, if you're going to be attending in person or online, it's a chance to see that, and hopefully a good sign that we'll be seeing it on Apple TV Plus not long after.
Apple has also acquired Spanish language romantic comedy series Love You to Death, which will premiere on Apple TV Plus February 5th. The second acquisition from a Spanish language series following You Would Do It Too. This is created by director Danny de la Orden and starring Veronica Ucci and Jean Amargos. The 7-episode series tells the story of the cautious Raul, who reconnects with a free-spirited and newly pregnant Marta following his heart cancer diagnosis. They resume a friendship that began in childhood, and in a relationship brought together by fate, begin to test their beliefs about love. Can the commitment-phobic martyr fall in love? And can Raoul meet the love of his life? We'll find out starting Wednesday, February 5th on Apple TV+. Another one for our already chock-a-block calendar at the beginning of this year, Devon.
Yeah, and another great watch just in time for Valentine's Day as well. Moving to In Production, speaking with the New York Times, producer Jerry Bruckheimer revealed that filming for Apple original film F1 wrapped last week following the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and that 2/3 of the movie has already been edited in preparation for its theatrical release this summer, beginning June 25th in the UK with a global release set for June 27th, 2025. This is a movie we've been talking about for a very long time. They've been filming throughout the F1 season as they could once the strike broke. It sounds like they're moving right along with editing if they've already got that much of it done. It seems like they're really, really pushing to get that June release date out and ready to go.
Yeah, and I think, fans of Bruckheimer's recent previous work, like Top Gun, Maverick, for example, you see the custom cameras that were devised. You can look more into and explore more into the filmmaking and the technical element of the filmmaking just from there as an appetizer, I would say. But yeah, very, very much looking forward to F1 next summer. Apple also released a first look at the upcoming Guy Ritchie directed family-friendly action-adventure film starring John Krasinski and Natalie Portman as two estranged siblings embarking on an epic quest filled with adventure and a chance at immortality. You can check out the photos at the link in the show notes, but it's being described as an Indiana Jones kind of throwback, which has me very, very excited, because for those that don't remember Harrison Ford beyond shrinking, and remember him maybe in Star Wars, there was that middle ground where we got to see him play Indiana Jones, and it's still one of my favourite film series to date. So yeah, big boots to fill.
Yeah, but if anyone can fill them, John Krasinski and Natalie Portman certainly can. So those first look photos definitely got me excited. In development, I hinted at this news a little bit ago, but Bad Monkey has officially been renewed for a second season. The show's creator Bill Lawrence said, "I hope that people know that Carl Hyacin is an idol of mine and an inspiration for me as a writer. To get to go on telling his story with Vince Vaughn and this great cast, at least the characters who are still alive, is very exciting. I'm very thankful to our partners at Apple TV Plus and Warner Brothers, as well as the entire team that helps bring this show to life." When we talked about the season finale of Bad Monkey, I said, they didn't stick the landing. I hope they get another chance. Now here we are. We're getting back into it. Who knows what severed body part we're going to be chasing down next, but I am excited for a season 2 of Bad Monkey, and I've got my fingers crossed for a slightly more satisfying ending, because it's a show I really enjoyed. Meanwhile, Apple Original series Lucky has found its director, Shogun's Jonathan Veltulkin, who will also serve as executive producer. From Jonathan Tropper in Hello Sunshine, Lucky stars Anya Taylor-Joy as a young woman who left behind a life of crime years ago, but must now embrace her darker criminal side one final time in a desperate attempt to escape her past. We just heard about this one recently. Sounds like the creative team is coming together, and fans of Shogun will be excited to hear that Jonathan Veltulkin is going to be behind the scenes of this one as well.
A TV show that I have yet to get round to watching, so that's why it wasn't up in the top lists. Definitely over Christmas, I promise you. As far as casting goes, we have the news of Barrett Canahan, whom listeners may recognise from his role on Cobra Kai. He's joined the cast of For All Mankind Season 5. He will play Marcus, a recent high school graduate living on Mars. And finally, The Family Plan 2 has confirmed a new member of its casting family, Kit Harington, who I've got to say was absolutely fantastic in the latest season of Industry. He played a devilishly conniving piece of work in that series, and I'm going to bet that based on that recent output, we may see Kit Harington as a potential baddie in this one, Devon. Well, as always, that's everything coming. Let's talk about this week on Apple TV, and not just this week, but throughout the holidays. Last Friday, we saw out of nowhere Wildlife Sharks, the new Apple immersive video experience. Now, I know recency bias kind of does sometimes come into play, Devon, but this third episode of Apple's immersive wildlife video series, it featured 9 exhilarating minutes with epic diving instructors Vincent and Deborah Cannibal as they led not only an amateur diver called Wendy Kerr, but us toward a deeper understanding of the tiger shark. This blew my mind, I've got to say. It was filmed for Apple Vision Pro on Tiger Beach off of Grand Bahama Island. I think it's by far my favourite immersive experience to date because, as we've talked about before, as incredible as a lot of the sets are that are built for immersive video storytelling, it's these real life experiences out in the wild where you're able to interact with animals and have these experiences that you know are out there but you would otherwise have the ability to experience. That's what really makes Apple immersive video come to life. And I was really hoping at the end of this that I would see a list of cameramen, grips, people behind the production, but instead the only credit we get is Apple Sentity, which I believe is the production group for the immersive video output from Apple as a company. So that's one request that I would have for next year, is that we get credits for these immersive videos. We'll watch them. Don't worry about that. Just make sure that they're there and that people behind some of these fantastic productions get their just due.
Absolutely. And it's just great to see the immersive output continuing to pick up on Apple Vision Pro. Last week also saw the addition of Season 4 of classic Yo Gabba Gabba to Apple TV+. So if your child is a fan of Yo Gabba Gabba Land and wants to go back to the original series, there's a whole season there now for you to stream over the holiday break. Monday saw the surprise release of a Carpool Karaoke Christmas. I guess this year's Apple TV Plus Christmas special is Carpool Karaoke themed. This one's hosted by Zane Lowe, featuring guests Dua Lipa, Chappell Roan, and Lady Gaga on 3 different road trips, of course, full of fun, singing along to Christmas music, and the debut of Lady Gaga's version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town, a fun rendition that's now available on Apple Music. This Wednesday saw the release of new episodes of Bad Sisters and Shrinking, both, of course, leading up to their finales next Tuesday, just before Christmas. So right before you head out to your Christmas family outing, go ahead and finish up Bad Sisters and Shrinking next week. They are both worth checking out. Wednesday also saw the premiere of docuseries The Secret Lives of Animals, one more nature docuseries before the year is out, and one worth checking out as you're catching up over the holiday. This Friday sees a new episode of Silo, which will continue over the break into January. It's our series that kind of keeps us going throughout the end of the year, and we'll get to talk about early next year. Friday also sees the finale of Before and a new episode of immersive series Adventure, this one called Ice Dive, which is guaranteed based on the title to stress me out.
And talking of stressful times of year, New Year's Eve, what are you going to do on New Year's Eve? I always leave my plans to the last minute, but thankfully I have something should I be at home on New Year's Eve. Apple Music Live to the rescue once again, this time from London with mixes from, and what a lineup this is, Bjork, Skepta, Uncle Waffles, and Apple Music's Nina and Tim Sweeney, and that will be airing 11 p.m. GMT and 3 p.m. Pacific, and also available on demand. In terms of the extras, over the holiday. True to tone, the 2024 wrap-up celebrating the best in black cinema and TV this year. A great editorial. It's nice to see the TV app back to its best when it comes to editorials with this rollout. Also in extras, Ava the Owlet holiday Moan Wish printable activity for the young ones in your life, and Yo Gabba Gabba Land, the Tiny Desk concert, a staple from NPR for music lovers. This time with Yo Gabba Gabba Land, incredible stuff. And we continue the music and a celebration of 2024 with Billie Eilish and her live acoustic set celebrating her Apple Music Artist of the Year 2024 accolade. And lastly, recorded on iPhone 16 Pro, Michael Bublé, Carly Pearce, Maybe This Christmas, the full song on Apple Music, recorded exclusively on Apple Voice Notes, which is mind-boggling. At least to me it is.
Oh, it definitely is. If you watch the video, they kind of get cheeky with it. Michael Bublé has his headphones and his mic, and he rips the headphones off. He moves the mic out of the way, and he just holds up his iPhone and starts singing into it. And super cool and a great demo of this feature that I think is going to be useful for a lot of musicians. So a fun way to celebrate it as it comes out. For TV app highlights this week, we've got a lot to catch up on over the holiday. Of course, Squid Game Season 2 coming to Netflix. Very excited for that one. What If Season 3 on Disney+. Gladiator 2 is coming to VOD. And Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, is coming internationally to Netflix. In the cinema to catch over the break is the remake of Nosferatu. I'll be staying far from that one, but it sounds like something you might want to check out over the break, Sigmund.
Oh, I don't know. Compared to some of the stuff I've seen this year, I think it's going to be pretty tame in comparison. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And then finally, of course, we've got the live broadcast of the Golden Globes on January 6th on Paramount Plus and CBS, with, of course, a number of Apple originals in the running, especially when it comes to Apple Originals series. So very, very cool. Great way to start off the year and a great way to see out the year, but a great way of seeing out episode 150 would be if we got some questions from our wonderful listeners of this podcast. We have quite a few. Where do we want to start?
Let's start with listener Tim, who listeners may recognize has guested on the podcast before. Tim sent in a couple questions. The first one, really interesting. What is the biggest marathon viewing session you've embarked on? Watching all James Bond movies back to back? Doing a chronological Star Wars watch, including the cartoons? Any big marathon viewings from either of you? I'll say my biggest marathon viewing is Star Wars, but it was back when the complete saga was just the first 6 films, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. I did them in that order. It was actually my second time watching Star Wars ever. I didn't watch Star Wars till I was an adult. I watched it the first time by myself, and then a week later I invited all my friends over and I said, let's just binge this thing. And I had different people pop in for different films. No one watched the entire thing with me, but I have to say, even when it was just those 6 films, that was a long day. And, of course, awesome films that I've continued to watch over and over since then. But, yeah, I guess that's maybe not a hugely long binge, but I think it turned out to be like 14 hours or so when all was said and done.
That's pretty epic. I'll be honest, I don't often do this, but the one that I really wanted to just catch up on the filmmaker's works in one go, and I did it. Akira Kurosawa, who, I don't know, do you know Akira Kurosawa?
I'm not familiar.
Okay, Hidden Fortress was really the inspiration for Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
So a little bit there. Of course, Seven Samurai, High and Low, which is being remade for Apple by Spike Lee. So yeah, Akira Kurosawa, most rewarding. Most arduous, the Star Wars prequels, which I have since had wiped from my temporal lobe, Severance style.
How dare you? Justice for the prequels. All right, let's move on to the next question. Matt asks, what are your views on a TV network or filmmaker making edits to their shows and films after the fact? It seems to be the biggest risk factor in buying movies and TVs digitally. I know you're a big digital collector, Sigmund, so what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree. It is a risk. It's a reason why I have started looking into physical media again to keep certain editions intact in my collection. I wish there was a better way of doing things, but yeah, digital is what I prefer, and I have for years preferred to purchase through Apple. But, there's a reason why I have a Synology NAS now.
I completely understand the creative mind's tendency to tinker. No creative project is ever fully finished, but at a certain point, the project doesn't really belong to you anymore, right? You've given it to the viewers. It's theirs. They feel a sense of ownership over whatever you've shown them. And so I'm all for people revisiting their projects later in life or with new technology or, whatever the reason is, director's cut, 20th anniversary edition, whatever. But I feel like when you get into trouble is when you kind of sneak those edits into already released editions and don't really say anything, and then someone watches your film and it's not the same and it upsets them. So I think if you're transparent about it and you're releasing it as a new edition, that's one thing. Whereas tinkering with something that someone already has and loves, that's very different.
Oh, another one from Tim. Do you have a favorite collector's edition DVD that you either prized in the heyday of DVDs or splurged on back then, either because of the video extras or some super cool collector's items included? Shall I answer this one first?
Go for it.
I don't like clutter. I wish all editions were exactly the same size and the same color on the spine, right? Same with books. I've been buying movie books recently and scripts and this kind of thing. It drives me wild that all books are different sizes and you can't display them nicely. At least I've not found a way. So yeah, I'm not a special edition kind of person, although I love the extras. One thing I will say is, in terms of the heyday of DVD extras, the thing that I miss, which I wish would come to Apple's platforms, is picture-in-picture extras, where you're seeing the scene and you're able to see behind the scenes at the same time. And maybe that's a way of bringing some of the behind-the-scenes extras that will come in immersive video to 2D screens as well.
Oh, yeah. I like that idea a lot. I haven't collected physical media in quite some time. When I don't know, I ever went super out of my way to buy like a really, really expensive, nice, super limited edition. I did buy the Star Wars Complete Saga when it was just the 6 films. That's a really nice edition with some great artwork and extras. The thing that I would fall into most often was with TV shows. I would buy the seasons as they were coming out. Season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And often those would be consistent like you were talking about. Sometimes they weren't, but a lot of times they would be. But then at the end of the series, they'd release, of course, the collector's full edition of the series. And I would want that one too. So I'd end up buying the full set. And then usually I'd sell the individual seasons on like Facebook or Hastings. I don't know if you ever went to a Hastings back in the day when those were a thing in the US. But, that's what I would run into is the TV shows with the full versions coming out, and I would want that collector's edition.
Simon asks, if you could bring back one TV show, which would it be?
This is going to sound like the most typical Devon answer, but I really do think this is a show that we could use these days. I think we need some levity on TV. We need some music on TV. I think Glee would actually do okay right now.
I knew it. As soon as you said levity, I was like, he's going to say Glee again.
Well, it's one of my favorite TV shows. I'm revisiting it for the first time in a while. And I wish people do like jokingly, what if Glee did Hamilton? What if Glee did some more modern things, and just the fun that could be had with those things and the characters that could take them on. And I think it would work. That's my pick.
Glee, the musical concert experience. Did you know it's available in 3D on Apple Vision Pro?
No, I didn't. I didn't know that. I don't own the film. So yeah, I need to check that out. That's awesome.
There we go. There we go. See, I'm always there to help. For me, a TV show that I wish hadn't gone. I'll be honest, most of the TV shows that complete, I feel like I've got a good relationship with. The ones that die early, sadly, I tend to forget about. One show that I would love to see reboot and come back for a few more seasons is Silicon Valley.
Oh, yeah.
I think it ended way too soon. And now with the DMA and everything else going on, Trump coming into power again, and I just think it would be a really interesting prism in which to give a political commentary on everything alongside. So, yeah, Silicon Valley. It would be what I would ask for to be returned to our screens.
That's such a good pick. Oh, I would love that too. All right. I'm rooting for Silicon Valley to come back as well. Simon had a second question for us. What was your favorite show or movie growing up, and does it still hold up today? I've mentioned this before. My favorite show growing up, favorite show of all time, still to this day, is Boy Meets World. Doing a rewatch right now, and I would say for the most part it does hold up. A lot of the lessons and things still do. Obviously looks wise, it's got that very 90s kind of sitcom look to it. But yeah, I'd say it does hold up. What about you?
The Ren and Stimpy show.
Oh,
it's bizarre, but it really does hold up. Like the animation style and everything is just really in your face, crass at times. And it's got a complicated history on the behind the scenes. But yeah, just fantastic, really out there. And I think it was like some episodes were banned from TV and, the creators just went a little bit too far. But I love filmmakers, artists, TV show producers, whoever it is that try and push the boundaries, even if I find it not to be to my taste and kind of crossing the line. I would rather people push the boundaries to that extent and then be told, actually, no, we've got to take it back a few levels, than everyone kind of just like fall into this, safe world in which no one's offended. So, yeah.
Ren and Stimpy would probably, I haven't seen those episodes, but they'd probably be considered tame by some of today's standards anyway, so...
I don't know. I feel like in today's culture, Ren and Stimpy just wouldn't be a thing.
Georgia asks, Devon and Sigmund being a father and godfather, how has that changed your appreciation for kids and family content? Sesame Street Workshop is looking for a new home. Could Apple be its new natural home?
I love that.
It's a great question. Great idea. I was thinking the same thing. We heard this week that Max has decided not to renew their contract for Sesame Street as the streaming home. And so, yeah, Sesame Street is going to be looking for a new home. Apple has worked with Sesame Workshop on Helpsters before, and I think it would make a great fit. Apple's really invested in their kids and family content. Personally, I've always appreciated people who are doing work in that space. It's very hard work, trying to create content that's relatable for children, especially in a world where kids go on YouTube and watch AI-generated junk, and unfortunately, it's just made to like kind of numb their brains and just get them to stare at the screen for as long as possible. I really appreciate high-quality kids and family content. As a parent now, I'm constantly on the lookout for that, and I do appreciate it more. But I've always tried to give those people their props because the work they're doing is important, and it's important to make sure our kids are watching things that are good for them, where they're going to learn and not just kind of zone out.
To give you an example of my godfather duties and how I take them, my friend Glenn, I asked, what shall I get for my goddaughter for Christmas? And he was like, she's really into guitars.
Oh.
And what he meant was a plastic, like Peppa Pig guitar, right, from Amazon, which is what I bought. But initially he saw my eyes completely light up and he was like, no, do not buy an electric guitar and a PV amp. And he knows me too well.
Amazing. You would be that godfather, wouldn't you? That's awesome.
Okay, Alex asks, besides using a straw for drinking whilst wearing Apple Vision Pro, do either of you have any eating or drinking habits when watching movies and TV?
I do have a few rules or things that I try to follow. If I'm watching something with subtitles, I try not to be eating anything because I really want to be able to focus and read and not miss any lines. If it's in a language that I can understand audibly, then, if I'm eating something, it's okay. But when I go to the movies, I don't know why, but I've always associated going to the movies with like sour candy. So I always pick up like sour gummy worms or sour Skittles or something like that to snack on at the movies. Otherwise, I'm happy to, sit down over lunch and watch something as long as it's not too disturbing, not going to take away my appetite. Those are kind of the only kind of guidelines that I have over food and when I'm watching. What about you, Sigmund?
At home, I try to just have snacks. When I go to the theatre, my theatre serves hot food. But what I find is once I get into a film, I want to have that hot food with me whilst the trailers are on. Mm-hmm. That's fine. Once I'm in a film, I don't want to eat hot food and I don't want to smell other people's hot food. And so it's a little bit of a turn off as well. Might be a bit weird, I don't know. When you're immersed in an experience, someone's on a desolate island and all you can smell is like this incredible baked pasta beside you. Kind of takes you out of the moment, I think. Yeah, they're kind of my food rules and snack rules.
Sean asks, what are your TV app purchase numbers like this year? Have your purchasing decisions changed in 2024? Well, I am the token streaming person on this podcast. I don't buy a lot of films and TV shows. I think the only one that I've bought within the last year was probably my Christmas gift for you last year.
Okay.
But yeah, I've been streaming all the way, and that hasn't really changed this year.
Well, I began the year with 2,279 films in my collection, and I write them all down and catalogue it all. I am currently at 2,267 films. So it's actually been a slower year than some years, which is a surprise. And I'm kind of happy about that. But what I am doing is the films that I really love, I'm just waiting for them to come on sale and then I'll pick them up digitally as well, because I think it's so important to continue to support the filmmakers and everyone behind these films, because you want to see them get made again and again and again, but not the same ones. No remakes, just new, fresh ideas. Okay, Simon asks, are there any trailers you don't watch and just going cold? My answer for that is, when it comes to Apple Originals, absolutely not, because we talk about them all. And honestly, watching trailers, I just love the art behind trailers, and so I can't stop myself from watching them.
Yeah, I have no self-control when it comes to trailers. If I see a film has a trailer, like the Superman Legacy trailer came out this morning, I watched it immediately. I've kind of accepted the trade-offs of that you're not going to have as many surprises. But honestly, I have trouble avoiding spoilers on films anyway. So to me, the trailer is a part of the experience. It's a part of getting excited. And, to me, it actually having partial information, it makes me try to fill in the gaps in my head, which again sets me up for that surprise and delight when the movie goes in a different direction. So yeah, I watch trailers for pretty much everything that I watch. Becca asks, who's the most famous person you have met and how did it go? I'll go first here because I don't have a super interesting answer here. I've never run into like a movie star or a famous singer or anything like that. Thinking back on my life and the most famous person I've ever met, it would have to be civil rights activist Reverend Dr. C.T. Vivian, who came to my school to speak. And he's famous in a different way, not for performing, but for his activism. And it was awesome getting to meet him. I got to put his mic pack on him. I was like a assistant in terms of the production of his speech that he was doing. And so I actually got to put his mic on him and just meet him very briefly. Very kind person who, had a great impact on the world. And it's cool to be able to say that I met him, and that's the most famous person I've ever met.
I'm guessing this question stems from last week, me dropping Justin Bieber's name and in our PSVR chat. I think the most famous person that I've met, albeit briefly, we didn't have tea or anything. I was at Great Ormond Street Hospital as a kid, had some really complicated heart difficulties when I was younger, which of course have resurfaced this year. But when I was at Great Ormond Street Hospital, which is a world-renowned children's hospital in London, I was visited, as were many sick kids at the time, by Princess Diana. And that moment is a moment I can remember vividly to this day. My mum is still very, very proud of that moment as well. And meeting Princess Diana pretty much, I think, tops the bill there. So, it went really well. I didn't mess up in any way.
Yeah, that's amazing. My wife's grandmother has a commemorative plate of Princess Diana in her living room, and every time I see it, I think of you and that story. It's super cool.
Very cool
that you had that experience. Jeremiah asks, if you could take something away from Apple TV or tvOS, what would it be, and what would you bring back? This is a really interesting question. I've wrestled with this because I think it's the first part of the question that I really struggle with, the taking away. Adding things, we have a wish list, we have all kinds of things that we'd love to add. Taking things away, I feel like Apple TV and tvOS are so streamlined, there's not a lot of cruft, personally, that's not used. The thing that I thought of that I personally don't use that I wouldn't mind going away is like the local network streaming of, files that are stored on your Mac that you can play back. I don't use that feature, so I wouldn't mind it going away, but I imagine there are still people who do, so I would feel bad for them if I was the person who took that away from them. But what I'm picturing in this question is like, okay, you have to take something away to get something. So if that's what I'm taking away, what I want back is the ability to use an entire shared photo library as your screensaver. This was changed in tvOS 17 to where you can't select the whole library, you have to select an album. And now you can select memories as well, but really I just liked having my entire shared photo library with my wife as our screensaver so it could pull from years ago and newer stuff. And now we have to use an album for that, which is fine. But I miss that feature and I would love to see that come back.
This is nice and easy for me. What I would take away, the featured row. I would just bring back up next to what it was, and really focus on the content that we purchase and that we love, rather than what's being pushed by studios and Apple TV Plus pretty much anywhere you look. And it's that featured row is pretty much dominated by the content I'm already subscribed to and I've already watched. The thing that I would bring back, nice and easy, number counts on my purchased media. The numbers used to be there in iTunes Movies. Now that iTunes Movies and iTunes TV shows are gone, there's no way of really being able to define how many films or TV shows you actually own. So that's something I'd like to bring back. Aaliyah asks, have you ever met in person? If not, plans for Dub 25. Now, this is going to be a surprise to some people that haven't listened from way back in the beginning, where I think we talked about this before. Devon and I have never met in person, and yet we talk pretty much every day via text message, sometimes multiple times a week, via call, as well as doing this podcast together. So I'm really hopeful that one day we get to meet. My big thing, if Dub 25 is going to be a thing that we are both able to attend this coming year. The one thing I want to do is an Apple TV centered meetup where we not only meet listeners of Magic Rays of Light, but also start to really give the platform some resemblance of meaningfulness at WWDC, because there's lots going on when it comes to stuff outside of what Apple are doing for all of the different platforms, but just nothing there for tvOS, at least right now.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of meeting up this summer and putting together a meetup for our listeners and other Apple TV fans as well. So nothing like on the books right now, but I'd say stay tuned. That leads us to our final question. Glenn Tenney says, it sure would be nice to get Magic Rays as a video, please. Glenn, I'll say, once again, kind of the same as our dub plans. Nothing on paper right now, but never say never. It's certainly something that we talk about and consider, something that's happening at Mac Stories for sure, with lots of shows there. So we appreciate the feedback, and I'd say, keep your eyes peeled and never say never. Well, that's our Q&A for our 150th episode. Thank you so much to all of our listeners who sent in questions. It means a lot that you would take the time to send those in. Some great questions and hopefully some interesting discussion that spurred off from it. So we're about to wrap up this episode, the final of this year, Sigmund, but we can't end the year without our traditional Christmas gift exchange. Of course, we put our own spin on it. This is Magic Rays of Light after all. So what we like to do, rather than sending each other a nice gift wrapped with a bow, we send each other a film from the TV app that the other can enjoy over the holiday break. And it also generates content for us, because when we come back next year, we can review those films, right? So it's a gift, it's homework, it's content, it's all of the above, but it's how we celebrate. And I look forward to celebrating with you every year. So I'm eager to find out what your gift to me is, but do you want to find out my gift to you first, or do you want to go first?
Well, I've been very generous, so I've got 3 gifts for you.
Oh, boy.
This time. Well, in fact, you have a choice. You have a choice. You can either, and this is really in your hands here, right? You can either have 3 gifts or 5 gifts, but you have to make that decision.
Do I get any other information like total runtime?
The 5 gifts would be more.
Okay, so it is
runtime.
Okay, so it is like it is as it sounds. 3 is less than 5. Oh, but I don't know what either is. This is stressing me out. You know what? I'm gonna risk it. You know what? When I'm at a gift exchange, I'm at a Dirty Santa, I always go for the smaller gift, because I believe the smaller gifts can be the best gifts. So let's go for 3.
Okay. Well, let's start with the first, and it's my film of the year, A Real Pain. Comes out December 31st. Again, about mismatched cousins David and Benji, who tour Poland to honour their grandmother, with their adventure becoming complicated as old tensions resurface whilst exploring their family history. I just think it's a fantastic film. It's one that I've wanted to share with you ever since the lights went up in the theatre when I got to see it early. So that is my main present to you.
Awesome.
The other, because it's Kieran Culkin, the other is I own all seasons of Succession and I've ripped them all to Plex. So you have at least the first season to watch, and that's my second gift in a different form. But my third, you've got a Christmas horror film, Christmas themed. It came out earlier this year, and it's a Christmas film about a mime with a performance by David Howard Thornton that some critics have put in the same bracket as the great Charlie Chaplin. It's about a clown called Art, who may be the scariest franchise character in horror for generations. He's seemingly motiveless, sadistically evil, murdering people simply for his own amusement, often with a cheerful demeanour. And, well, none of it makes any sense, Devon. In fact, I struggle to watch all of it. So this is more of a challenge, I think, for you.
How far I can get into it.
Yeah, it's incredibly gory. It was shot by Damien Leone with Panavision anamorphic lenses and feels like something right out of the video nasties from the 1980s. The reason it's so notable this year, it released as unrated in theatres in October, earning $63 million on our opening Halloween week from a $2 million budget, and became the highest grossing unrated film in history.
Oh.
Apparently he's an alien, this clown. Yeah, I don't know. This isn't a good movie by any means, but I thought it would be funny for it to be stuck in your TV library and for you to see Art the Clown. The film is called Terrifier 3, and it's currently available in the TV app.
Okay. Well, thanks so much. I really am excited about A Real Pain. Hearing you describe that one, that sounds like something that I would really enjoy. So I look forward to watching that and reviewing it. And okay, you finally got me to commit to watching Succession as well. So congratulations there. My gift to you is an older film. It's actually 10 years old, but it's something I thought you would appreciate. It has a little bit of your kind of film, I think, in it. It's an indie film, but it's also got a little bit of kind of my experience and life in it as well. So maybe giving you a little bit of a glimpse into my day-to-day and the things that I think about. It's a 2014 film called Believe Me from director Will Backey out of Texas. It stars Alex Russell, Zachary Knighton, Joanna Brady, and Nick Offerman is also in there as well, which is cool. This is a film about a college student who just before graduation gets a bill that his student loans are due and he can't graduate if he doesn't pay them in just a few weeks' time. And so he has to come up with all this money very, very quickly. And so what he decides to do is create a fake charity and go around to churches raising money for, I think it's digging wells, but he's actually going to use the money for his tuition. And he kind of becomes like almost a televangelist level speaker. Like people really start to buy into what he's doing and start to believe in him. And so it's this kind of exploration about power and belief and the mix between those two things, and being careful about who you're listening to and who you're following. And it's funny. It's a funny film as well. There's some great jokes. If you've ever been in like church culture at all, there's some great jokes about just poking fun at some of the sillier things there. But really, to me, it's a film that I watched when it came out, and it made me think a lot about my career and the decisions that I make and the way that I interact with people. So again, indie film from hopefully someone you've not heard of before, a new voice for you, and something that is a little bit of reflection of me as well. So I hope it's something you enjoy. Well, Merry Christmas, Sigmund. Thank you so much for the gifts that you got me. I hope you enjoyed yours. Of course, we'll recap all that in the new year. But we also want to extend a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to our listeners as well. We very much appreciate you taking the time to listen, spending the year with us. This is, once again, our last episode of the year. We'll be taking a couple of weeks off before we jump back in January to get ready for an epic slate of Apple Originals as they come. In the meantime, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to us on social media via the links in the show notes. You can email the show or send us an iMessage to magic@macstories.net. It's our last one of the year, Sigmund. You want to do our sign-off?
Absolutely. Of course, happy holidays to everyone. Whatever you celebrate at this time of year, we'll be back, of course, January 8th. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a happy holidays.